everybody, I'm Spencer Aronfeld, and welcome to the Trust Me, I'm a Lawyer podcast. With me, as always, is my co-host, Nory Aronfeld. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Welcome, everybody.
And you welcome. I haven't seen you in a couple days.
Yeah, I know.
It seems like I have to have a podcast now to spend some time with you.
Sorry about that.
Well, you've been busy, but man, I have for you a guest today that will be probably the most exciting person that we've talked to in a long time. Joe Nicastro. How are you, Joe?
Good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. I read about this guy, Nory. He is a super successful attorney, and he's done a lot of really cool things. But Joe, before we talk about your law practice, because Nory doesn't know, I want to talk about how you're a rock star.
Sure. I mean, that's a lot more exciting than the practice of law.
Well, my son here is kind of like a Jewish Kanye West. He's been making beats and music and videos and everything, and I thought he'd be really excited to hear about a guy who is a musician with the accomplishments you've had and who's now practicing law. So tell us about it.
Well, I've been playing guitar since I was 5 years old. Grew up on the Beatles, Elvis Presley, Led Zeppelin. And there came a point in high school where I started a rock and roll band called More Than Me. Well, I actually joined a band called More Than Me, which was a reggae rock outfit. And I was the fourth and last member to join that foursome. And then what happened was, this would have been about 1999. So after that, we decided to take our show on the road sometime after, I would say probably the early 2000s. And we just started touring, playing hundreds of shows from Buffalo, New York. That's where we're based out of. That's where I live. That's where I am right now, my hometown. And, we just hop in a van and just go from Buffalo all the way down the coast. We play all over Florida. And
Dude,
then
that's every boy's dream.
Yeah. It was a pretty cool experience. And, and we hopped on some really cool tours with some pretty big bands, but then we got a big break in 2010. We entered a contest through Hard Rock International, and we had to compete against thousands of bands nationally. And we were the number one pick. We got like 30-something thousand votes. And the next thing you know, we were on a plane to London, and we opened up for Paul McCartney in Hyde Park.
Oh my God, that's so cool. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard. So why give that up? I mean, that's almost like a deal with the devil kind of situation. Why would you give that up to become a lawyer?
You know, it's really funny, Spencer. The music industry took a pretty big hit in like the late, I would say like 2008, 2009, 2010. Just the music industry really turned upside down because all of a sudden bands relied heavily on, selling merchandise, but more important, the vehicle that actually made bands money was a CD, a record. And then all of a sudden, records just were not being sold anymore because everything was free and accessible through the internet. It started with Napster, and then over time, it just became worse and worse and worse. So now everything is streamed, but these big companies, these conglomerates, like your Spotify's, your YouTube's, artists aren't making any money off that. These big companies are making everything. So things changed a lot, and all these opportunities we had through labels just weren't there anymore. And then what happened was when we got back from London, we were just simply put, we were out of gas. There was just no gas left in the tank. We did a pretty awesome tour following London. We did some shows in the Caribbean, jammed with the Whalers, the Blue Oyster Cult.
Wow.
We played, we performed at Wrigley Field. We did a lot of really cool marquee shows. And then it came back to kind of renew our talks with Hard Rock. And, they kind of were like, okay, well, you had your year and it's not where we expected you guys to be. So part of the band wanted to relocate to Brooklyn and start up in New York City. I always took the position that we were more of a Buffalo-based band. And I just didn't want to go to a new city and start all over again. So I said, well, you know what? The band's going to go on hiatus. And I always had wanted to go to law school and be a lawyer since I was a kid. So I decided to dabble, and I turned out to really like it. And the rest is history.
Any regrets at all? Do you miss being a rock star?
Well, what's really funny, Spencer, is our band, actually, we were on hiatus for about 10 years. We did some shows, here and there for some charity stuff. And then we just released some new records just this past year. We went back to the studio. We decided that the four of us the band's More Than Me. The four of us just decided that we missed, first and foremost, we missed hanging out as if we were a family. We still are a family, but we missed each other more than anything because we realized that we were almost friends first and then a rock and roll band second. So there was that whole element, that whole human element to it that we just kind of really missed. And it brought us back together. It brought us back in the studio. So what we did is we regrouped in Buffalo. We wrote a bunch of songs, and then we went actually out to Canton, Ohio, to a music studio called Little C because we wanted to get away from everybody so there was no distractions, which, in the practice of law, sometimes you have to do the same thing. When I'm preparing for, Spencer, right?
I can't escape it. I can't hide. It's 24/7.
It is. And then, sometimes if you're preparing for, I just did a big arbitration. It was a 3-panel virtual arbitration. And, the quarantine helped because it forced me to lock myself in my house and I had no distractions. But, it's the same thing with music. If you're going to cut a record, you're going to rehearse, you have to be away from the world. There can't be any distractions. I mean, the Beatles were very well known for having no outsiders when they were recording music. And I know that was a really big issue when Yoko decided to move into the studio. I think the story goes she moved her mattress into the studio and she was kind of just hanging out and living there. I know the rest of the Beatles weren't too happy about that because all of a sudden, you had an outsider, even though she was a very important person in John's life. And I'm sure the Beatles, it was important to the whole Beatles operation, but she wasn't part of the Beatles,
Right.
And I don't know how we just got on Yoko Ono, but we did it.
Well, all roads lead to Yoko, but it threw the chemistry off. It just wasn't the same, I guess, for them having just the other set of eyes and ears and that energy in there.
Exactly. And that's why we went to Canton and we cut the record. So we cut 6 new songs. We released 2 and we were going to do a big release early 2020, but then the quarantine or the coronavirus epidemic has struck us all. So we haven't been around each other. We haven't had time to kind of plan and do some face-to-face. We don't want to plan a follow-up show. I mean, we did a really big show in the winter. We did like a holiday show. And we wanted to follow up with a big festival show this summer. We had a couple opportunities, but everything's canceled. So, but what are you going to do?
People out there, Joe, who are listening to this and want to listen or buy your music, what's the best way for them to do that?
You know what? We are on iTunes. More Than Me is on iTunes. But, at this point in time, we're just, if we have a Spotify channel, so you can just search More Than Me and you can listen to our music for free, because we're just trying to get our music out there at this point. We're not, every band's just doing that now. We appreciate the support, but, we're not going to squeeze people for money right now during the quarantine. So if they want to check out the band, they can go, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. It's More Than Me Band. And we're on Spotify, so you can check out our stuff. Yeah.
Have you found this time to be, because with my production and music, I don't necessarily play like one instrument like a lot of producers nowadays. I mean, I'm learning some piano, but like it's mostly electronic. But I feel like if I could play an instrument like fluently like you can, I wouldn't be bored during the pandemic. I would just be playing it all the time. So have you found like your creativity to be stunted being locked up indoors, or has this been like a flourishing time for you musically?
You know what? It's kind of a loaded question. It's kind of a catch-22 because I'm disappointed in myself that I haven't been rehearsing my instrument more with all this time on my hands. But I think a lot of it has to do that I'm not, I still perform locally with a band called the Kensingtons, and I do different things with different artists here and there. But when we're playing shows locally, we're constantly learning new music. This is with my other group, the Kensingtons, and because they've closed live venues, I don't have pressing songs to learn and expectations to live up to. So there's nothing behind me that's pressuring me to, hey, I got to practice because I have a concert Friday. I got to make sure my chops are up to date. So it's almost like I've been on hiatus personally playing. I still have played here and there. However, I have written a lot of new material. Now, practicing guitar is way different than writing songs. I take the position that they're 2 completely different things, because when you're writing a song, you're doing more with your brain. You're doing more thinking. You're being creative. When I'm sitting down and trying to keep my chops up, because I'm a lead guitar player, I have to make sure that I'm performing at the highest level. you're not doing that when you're writing songs, because you're not focused on speed, technique, your rhythm, the groove. But on a, on a positive note, it was kind of nice that I've been doing a lot of songwriting. I've been collaborating with some artists in New York City. We have a couple of publishing opportunities we're working on. So, and a buddy locally, my friend Matt Connors, he's an excellent songwriter. My friend Ryan Doyle, who's done some big things in the industry. He was the lead singer of More Than Me. So we've been writing a lot, and I don't know where these songs are going to go, but we're trying to pitch them to a couple artists. And to me, it's not, this is not a financial thing. We just love the sport. There's something really fun about writing a song than trying to get someone else to play your song. It's like the biggest challenge ever, And to your credit, bud, you're always in time to pick up an instrument, and what you're doing is music. That is being creative. It's it's not a physical instrument. It's more like you're behind the keyboards but you're still creating, which is interesting. And that's where the industry's at right now. There's so much of that out there that you don't even know it's real sometimes when you listen to something on the radio. You don't know if it's computer or if it's actually someone in a room playing an instrument.
So, Joe, what advice would you give my young aspiring musician here, my young aspiring artist? Because you're as close as I've ever been to a rock star as talking to you. So I don't know what to tell him as a parent. What advice would you have for him?
It's funny because a lot of friends of mine, a lot of my friends, I'm 37 years old now. I'm at the point where, people are getting married, they're having kids, and they always come to me and they ask, what do you recommend for my son, my daughter? And the truth is, it's one of the hardest times to be an artist, period. Especially music, because at least if you're a painter, you can still paint things and sell them, and they have a tremendous amount of value. People aren't buying music, but by the same token, it doesn't mean you can't make it. You have to evolve. A lot of my friends, as of late, are more successful than they have ever been in their entire life as a rock and roll band. For example, there's like a big Canadian band called The Tragically Hip. I don't know if you guys have heard them.
I have. It's a cool name.
It's a very culty band, and their lead singer, Gord Downey, passed away from brain cancer a couple of years ago, and it was really devastating to their fan base because they were a very culty band. And what I mean by culty is, you have your Grateful Deads, you have your Fish bands, you have bands that people live, breathe, and die by. And it's an extremely huge part of their life. And I'm not saying they're the only band that's ever done that in the history of the world, but they did it probably better than anyone in Canada and parts of the Northeast, because people will never forget them. And what's interesting is my older brother, Frankie, is an incredible guitar player, Frank Nicastro, and he plays lead guitar for a tribute band called the Strictly Hip. And this band's been around for 20 years, but a couple of years before Gord passed, for some reason, it just started clicking. They had the right people in there, and it just worked. But the point is, they never gave up. They weren't worried about, now granted, they're a tribute band, so they don't have to worry about selling records. But they still came up with a thing that people love and are attached to, and they're masters of performing the music of the Tragically Hip. That being said, all their hard work, their perseverance, and just doing the music, and just doing a good job at reproducing the music has now gotten them to a level where they're playing with, like the Toronto Philharmonic, the Buffalo Philharmonic. They're doing big orchestra shows now. They performed the halftime show at a stadium, New Era Field, for the Buffalo Bills. Are you guys Miami fans? Miami Dolphins?
Well, I guess we should say not really.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
The only football we really follow is the Miami Hurricanes, but my son is a huge soccer English Premier League supporter. So he's
cool. Awesome, buddy. That's really cool. So my point is, this band went from doing, little pub shows, grimy bar shows for years, playing on Chippewa, playing at the Crocodile, to now they're playing in front of thousands of people, and they've made a living out of it, and they're super successful, and they have a humongous fan base, and there's no doubt that once the quarantine restrictions are lifted, they're going to be back at it. But I've got dozens of stories like that. I've got friends that have toured with big stars and still live in Buffalo, work out of Buffalo. And it's just because they just kept doing, they just were true to what they were good at. So my advice to your son is if you're into music, then just do a lot of it. Make sure you like it and just be true to yourself. You have to be you. You don't want to copycat people because every time you try to copycat someone, the next thing's out there. So you're just chasing your tail. You know, and it's true in the practice of law too. It's really interesting. There's a lot of advertisements locally. I don't know if you guys are dealing with lawyer ads like crazy in your hometown.
Nonstop, 24/7.
And you know what, Spencer, I always thought it was the worst thing the Supreme Court did when they said you could do advertising. I think it was the worst thing ever, but it's a double-edged sword because I don't want to do it because it seems a bit tacky. It doesn't seem genuine. Like if someone's really good at something, I don't want to see them on a billboard. And by the same token, these lawyers on billboards, you never get them. They're advertising. They're advertising a brand, but you're never getting the guy on the billboard.
I'm not sure you'd want the guy on the billboard, at least the ones that are down here.
Exactly. And I have nothing against the guys on billboards because I wouldn't be surprised if I'm on one this year. I've already talked about it. But my point is, it's just like music. I kind of revolutionized my lawyer marketing. So I have a lot of lawyers now, and I built up quite a fan base on my socials, like Facebook. I've got almost, well over 5,000 followers. And my fans are they're very loyal, and they really promote the heck out of me. But that's because I did my own branding. But what's really funny is I've noticed a lot of law firms are stealing some of my ideas. And frankly, I don't really care. It's flattering to me because these are some major players. I mean, these are major guys, and I don't know if they're like, oh wow, Joe Nicastro just did this lawyer post. And it's really different and it's creative because I tell real stories.
Yeah.
That's one thing I do. But they kind of try to do it. But the problem is you can't hire a marketing company that's going to do what I'm doing.
Correct.
You can pay 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000, $100,000 for the best marketing firm in the world. And I'll bet my Cadillac that they won't get more traffic than me, because what are they going to do? They're going to post something generic with a generic article with generic content, and it does nothing. You have to put in the time, and you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be different. And every time they try to copycat what I'm doing, I'm on to the next thing. So they're way behind, and then it kind of clashes with what they're doing before. And I think it sends mixed signals to their audience. So it really destroys their branding. They just got to kind of stick with what they're good at and let, but I don't know how I got on that tangent, but it's been on my mind lately. So I thought I'd talk about it.
One thing that I found out recently, which blew me away, is that my competition, and I really love your brand, and it resonated with me, and you can feel the authenticity of what you're putting out there. And that's why I really wanted to have you on our program. But what I found recently, Joe, was that my competition, because I have a niche practice. I'm a personal injury lawyer. Of course, we do car accidents and slip and falls. But what I do personally 24/7 is I sue cruise lines. So I'm a maritime lawyer. So it's a niche within a niche within a niche. But I found that my competition was SEO, search engine optimizing, my name for them. So if you Googled Spencer Aronfeld, their firms would come up. They were actually paying keywording my name. So I'm in the process right now of trademarking that stuff so that I can prevent them from benefiting from paying to use my name to promote their firms.
I think there's something wrong with that.
I do too.
I mean, that's interesting too, Spencer. That might be something we want to talk about because, yeah.
Have you Googled yourself lately and seen if other firms in your area are using your name?
I haven't, but I'm going to. But I did recently start the Hurt Hotline. It's a 24/7 hotline. If you're injured, you call it, and I'm in the process of attempting to trademark it for that very reason, because I've noticed that a lot of firms are doing that. I just think I just don't think that's right.
Who answers the phone if someone calls the Hurt Hotline?
And that's me, and that's what's That's my whole thing. You can call it 24/7, 716-689-8888, and 24/7. And you call me, you get me. That's part of my campaign. Because
Wow.
I kind of got a boutique practice. We're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But I'm focusing on the client side of it right now. Of course, I got to tee up the big cases, the small cases, and take care of everybody. Well, there is no such thing as a small case in my practice. Everybody's important, but sometimes certain things require more attention because maybe different laws apply, as doing your maritime stuff.
Can you share with us, Joe, quickly, because we're running short on time? You got national attention for an incredible result in a labor law case.
Yes.
Could you share with us how you did it, what you did, and?
What's really funny is it was interesting. The labor laws in New York State. Do you guys have a similar, like a scaffolding law in Florida?
I don't even know what that is.
Okay, so basically in New York State, under the labor law, section 241, if you fall from a height and you're injured while working on a ladder, say, or scaffolding, it's strict liability, because if something failed with your scaffolding or your ladder, that means it was inadequate. If you're on a ladder and the ladder, go ahead.
You phased out for a second. If you fall from a ladder or scaffolding, it's a what?
In New York State, if you fall from a height and you're injured due to an inadequate safety device, whoever was directing or controlling the work can be held strictly liable.
Okay, so this workers' compensation in the course and scope of employment.
It's different than workers' comp because you can't sue your employer unless there's a grave injury. That's an exception. However, under the scaffolding law, let's say I'm a construction worker and some third party, I may work for my employer, but some third party, some general contractor is responsible for site safety. He's the one who's providing the equipment. If you fall due to there being an inadequate safety device, the wrong scaffolding, say you didn't have a safety harness on, someone wasn't holding the ladder and you fall from a height, it's strict liability if there was something inadequate about your protection. And it's great law. It emerged in New York City in the early 1900s when they were building all these skyscrapers, because you had all these guys falling, hundreds of feet, sometimes only falling 10 feet, but it's beautiful because it's a beautiful law for our hard workers, our construction workers. I was a construction worker, so it's a great law, and it's an important law. So in this case, we had a painter. He was painting a house, and due to inadequate safety, due to a faulty ladder, actually, it wasn't being held at the bottom. No one was holding the ladder. It wasn't secured at the top, and he was working on an incline. I mean, that spells bad news. But he wasn't responsible for himself on that job because the contractor gave him all the equipment and was giving him instructions and creating plans with the worker. And that's supervision, direction, or control, which means he had a duty to be responsible for my client's safety, and he failed. And we were able to get a nice recovery for that. And I can't talk numbers due to confidentiality, but it was a nice result. And my client suffered a really bad injury. And he is one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And it means so much to me that a lot of people told me that was a hard case to win because there was so many different factors in that case, and just facts that were crazy, frankly. Because it was 3 different stories of what happened, which is always bad news in our business. It happens a lot,
Congratulations to you, and thank God to your client that he had you on his side. And it's just been wonderful speaking with you today, my friend.
Thank you guys, man. It's awesome.
Before we say goodbye?
I don't, but I do want to also thank you for the advice about the music. That I understand there's like so many kids my age now getting into music and production specifically. So it's like always welcome for me to hear from someone who has a lot of experience.
Well, hopefully we will stay in touch. I know I will.
Absolutely. What part of Florida are you guys based out of?
We're in Miami. We're right now in Coral Gables, about a block away from the University of Miami.
Excellent. I was down in Miami last year. I love Miami. I plan on hopefully we'll see if the restrictions are the restrictions lifted down there right now, or
They just lifted them this week. I haven't taken advantage of the lifted restrictions because I don't feel as though that the safety has risen to the level of opening up everything. So I'm still working out of our house and podcasting out of our house. But they have opened up. Have you gone out at all?
Not really.
Yeah. Of course, the minute the salon's open, my wife got her hair.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, Joe, thanks so much for spending some time with us. You're an inspiration on so many levels. A wonderful advocate for the injured by day and a rock star by night. I knew you'd be thrilled to meet this guy. I certainly was. We want to thank you again for being on our podcast.
Thank you, and I'll find you guys when I'm down in Miami. I'll be there shortly. Okay, my friends?
It will be our pleasure to take you out for dinner. We'd love to spend some
Oh,
time.
sounds great. I'll take you up on that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you.
So, Nory, if people are interested in being on our podcast, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Just email us at trustmeimalawyerpodcast@gmail.com or through Instagram. You can DM us on Trust Your Lawyer Podcast there as well.
Awesome. Thanks again, Joe. Be safe.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care. God bless.
Thanks.